Today's scripture will be found in the book of Hosea. We'll be reading from chapter 11, verses 1 through 11, found on page 972 in the Bible in front of you, if you care to follow along. This is speaking about God's love for Israel. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. But the more I called Israel, the further they went from me. They sacrificed to the Baals, and they burned incense to images. It was I who taught Ephraim to walk, taking them by the arms, but they did not realize it was I who healed them. I led them with cords of human kindness. With ties of love, I lifted the yoke from their neck and bent down to feed them. Will they not return to Egypt? And will not Assyria rule over them because they refuse to repent? Swords will flash in their cities, will destroy the bars of their gates, and put an end to their plans. My people are determined to turn from me. Even if they call to the Most High, he will by no means exalt them. How can I give up on you? Give up Ephraim. How can I hand you over, Israel? How can I treat you like Admah? How can I make you like Zebulun? My heart is changed within me. All my compassion is aroused. I will not carry out my fierce anger, nor devastate Ephraim again. For I am God and not man, the Holy One among you. I will not come in wrath. They will follow the Lord. He will roar like a lion. When he roars, his children will come trembling from the west. They will come trembling like birds from Egypt, like doves from Assyria. I will settle them in their homes, declares the Lord.
That was great. Now I feel like if I don't get the sermon right the first time, maybe I'll get a second try.
There we go.
So my name's Brent. I'm a Presbyterian minister, barely. It's kind of what I used to do. I occasionally still preach. My day job is as a prosthetist, so I make artificial limbs for people that are missing part of an arm or a leg or all of it. And it's pretty great because other ministers talk about making the lame walk, and that's just my job. So, just a little over 2 years ago, at about 4 o'clock in the morning, my wife woke me up, and she didn't feel great, which was not a big surprise because the night before we had gone to a local pizza place and sampled their Prego pizza. That's the pizza that is supposed to induce labor. And my wife was just about ready to give birth, so it wasn't a surprise that she woke up and she wasn't feeling well. But she told me that it wasn't just labor, something's not right. And we called her doctor and then rushed over to the hospital, and they confirmed that something wasn't right. And long story short, it was very serious. My wife had to have an emergency C-section, and it was not sure that she would make it out of that. The instruction that she had given me when we talked about giving birth was, she said, everybody else is going to be concerned about the baby, and I need you to be with me and be concerned about me. So after her doctor had pulled our son Sam out, and he'd been shuffled off into the other room, I was holding my wife's hand, and a nurse came and said, "Do you want to see your son?" And I didn't even respond. I just held my wife's hand and looked into her eyes. And the nurse came back a few minutes later and said, "Do you want to see your son?" And my wife said, "It's okay, go see him." And I looked down at Sam, and it was a scene right out of the Grinch, where his heart that's 2 sizes too small all of a sudden becomes bigger, because I had a heart that was big enough to care for my wife and to love her and live with her and give my life to her, not in the same way that we give our lives to God, but in the way that a husband and wife give their lives to each other. And all of a sudden there was this new person, and I had to do the same thing for this new person. And I could feel my heart get bigger in me so that I could give my life to Sam. So Sam and I, there's Sam. Once we got home, one of our favorite things to do was always go for a walk around our community. And of course, it started out and I just held Sam on my shoulder. I think I actually strained both shoulders from carrying him around on our walks so much. And then I got him onto the little pack that goes on the front, and then he made it into the pack that goes on the back. And he's 2 now, so he's running around on his own, and I just have to do my best to keep up with him. We like to walk around our community. We go down one way and there's a bridge, and we like to jump on the bridge and say bump, 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 bump. And we can go down another way and we pass some big trees and go around the corner to the mailbox and get the mail. And now, as I said, Sam's walking on his own, and he really likes stepping stones, and we've got stepping stones all over our community. And when he was first learning to walk, he'd see the stepping stones and he'd say, "Big step." And he'd put his hands down onto the ground and turn around and reach over with one leg and then the other leg and get onto the stepping stone. And when he got off the stepping stone, he would do the same thing. He'd put his hands onto the stepping stone and then back off of it. Now he likes to just jump from stone to stone and run all over the place. And he's gone from big step to big jump. And he jumps all over the place. It's a lot of the time now, it's not even a walk anymore, it's a run. We like to play Where'd Daddy Go? And I will look at him and say, "Where'd Daddy go?" And then I run and hide behind a tree or a bush, and I make sure that he can see where I hid, and then he takes off at top speed to find me. And a lot of the times, once he finds me, I like to pick him up and give him a big squeeze and a kiss. And as we go on our walks and I pick him up and I hold him, I find myself looking back on the walks that went before and when I carried him, and I look forward to him walking and hiking with me and running and growing up to be a man and walking away, which he'll have to do. And I look forward to when he'll come back and hopefully maybe he'll let me give him a hug and hold him again. Now on summer's evenings, Sam likes to get together with his friend Bodie, who lives next door, and all the parents will come out onto the lawn in front of our house, and we get the chairs out, the lawn chairs out, and sit down and relax. And Sam and Bodie start playing, and before very long, they find their way down to that bridge that we like to jump on and go bumpa, bumpa, bumpa. And that's the boundary where they're supposed to turn around. And they know that because they cross the bridge, and then they look over at us and smile, and we say, "Come back!" And sometimes they do, but a lot of times they just take off running. Or they'll go down to those trees that we would pass on the way to the mailbox, and they know that's the boundary, and we'll say, "Come back!" And then Sam gets a big smile on his face, and he looks over at us, and he looks ahead to the mailbox and some of his favorite stepping stones to jump on, and takes off running. So we have to have a way of disciplining for that. And for other small 2-year-old sins. So we'll say, "That's one." And if Sam does the same thing again, we'll say, "That's 2." And if he keeps on doing what we're trying to stop him from doing, "That's 3." And if he does it one more time, "Take 5." And then he gets set down in his room or on the staircase, or when we were just camping on top of a rock, whatever. And he sits there for a couple of minutes, and then we come get him and give him a big squeeze and tell him, "We're all done. Discipline's over." And we can... Thank you.
Okay.
So I tell you about Sam to tell you a little bit about God and Israel, and kind of like we had the same old children's sermon that children's sermons tend to be again and again this morning, this passage that we have from Hosea starts out in a very familiar way. See, prophecy in the Old Testament has a pretty standard form. God says, "You did this and this and this and that, and because you did that, I'm about to do this horrible thing to you and that horrible thing and such and such." Now, occasionally it'll be, "You did this and this and this, but I love you anyway, and I'm going to do something really good for you." So Hosea starts out, and he starts kind of laying into the people, "You've been worshiping the Baals, you've been burning incense at altars," and they're going, yeah, we did that, and they're, of course, expecting to hear the, "Therefore, I'm gonna," and sure enough, they do. God says, "I'll send the sword on your cities, and you're going to get taken away to Assyria." And they can kind of see that coming. They've been making some kind of halfway plans to try to get out of it. Nothing that's gonna work. But in the middle of the you did this and you did that and you did this and you were burning incense to the Baals and all those things that you've been doing, God all of a sudden gets nostalgic. And I can just imagine the people that are listening to Hosea going, wait a second. God starts talking about when Israel was a child, teaching them to walk. Of course, that walk was a pretty dramatic one. That was out of Egypt through the waters of the Red Sea. But God's talking about being a daddy to the people. Even as he said, you did this and you did this and you did that. And they know that the judgment part is coming. And repetition is a pretty common thing in prophecy and in Hebrew poetry, and this is in poetry. So after that first one, God starts in again. My people are determined to turn from me. Even though they call me God Most High, I will by no means exalt them. And they're ready for what's coming. Therefore I will, just like Sam knows what's coming. That's 1. That's 2. That's 3. Take 5. They know what's coming. But all of a sudden, instead of, I'll send a sword on their cities and cut down their gates and make life really miserable, all of a sudden it's, how can I give you up, Ephraim? How can I hand you over, Israel? How can I treat you like Admah? How can I make you like Zeboim? Those are the 2 cities that were destroyed along with Sodom and Gomorrah, the collateral damage. My heart is changed within me. All my compassion is aroused. I will not carry out my fierce anger, nor will I devastate Ephraim again. For I am God and not a man. Well, that's a surprise. That's not what we were expecting to hear. They know how it works, just like Sam knows how it works. When we call and he runs away, when God calls and the people run away, they know something bad's going to happen. But instead there's this. A surprise. A great, big, huge, gymongous surprise. And it doesn't stop there. It just gets bigger. For I am God and not a man, God says, the Holy One among you. Now, that might sound nice to us. A Holy One among us. It's kind of nice to think of a nice, holy God with us, wrapping his arms around us, loving us. But you got to remember, this is a people that when holy God comes face to face with them, they fall down on the floor and will not look up for fear that if they see the Holy One among them, they would be struck dead. Surprise! The Holy One among you will not come against your cities. And then God says, surprise, they will follow the Lord. He will roar like a lion. And the people say, oh, okay, now here we go. He's going to roar like a lion, and he'll bring some other animals, maybe some bulls and dogs, and yeah, they're going to eat us up. That sounds like some good prophetic judgment. This isn't the first prophet that's come through these parts with this message. Amos did the same thing. They know what's coming. The lion's going to roar, and his children will come trembling from the west. They will come from Egypt trembling like sparrows, from Assyria fluttering like doves. Now the trembling and the fluttering are not anger or not fear words. They're speed words. So this is surprise. The lion's going to roar, and the birds are all going to come in a hurry to the lion. This is the kind of lion that lays down with the lamb. And then right where the worst news should be, I will settle them in their homes, declares the Lord. Surprise. My holiness means I'm not like you. It's not you cross me and I'm going to get back at you. My holiness means I love you better than you can imagine being loved. Yes, better than you deserve to be loved. Almost all of us have no trouble with guilt and knowing what we deserve. And when we look forward, expecting to get what we deserve. And yet, here is God breaking the rules of prophecy to say, you did this and that, and you know exactly what it was. And because you did, therefore, I am going to grab you and pick you up and hold you against my cheek and love you like you can't possibly imagine. Matthew looks back at this text. Matthew, who wrote the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew looks back, and where it starts out of Egypt, I called my son, he says, that sounds kind of like Jesus. Because when Jesus was a little kid and Herod was making trouble for boys his age, to put it in a small way, his family went to Egypt. And then they came back. Matthew looks back to this passage and sees Christ. And Christ, I could swear, must have read this the night before he told the parable of the prodigal son. Don't you think? Doesn't it sound pretty much the same? A child goes away, a parent calls, and they don't come back. But then they do. And the parent rushes out. And you would expect that parent, that father, to send that lousy, good-for-nothing son packing, but instead, he throws a big party, puts a ring on that kid's finger and a robe, and slaughters the fattened calf, the good one. for that party. You would think Jesus must have read this passage before he came up with that story. He looks back and looks forward to a people coming to him. And looks forward again. You can't read this passage by itself because it runs all the way through the Bible. It looks back to the Exodus out of Egypt, and it looks forward to the exile to Assyria and Babylon and to the return from that, and it looks forward to Christ coming to preach to Israel, and it looks forward past that. My youth pastor, when I was in high school, now he's a pastor in Reno, Jay Hull, talked about the letter in Revelation to the church in Laodicea, and he says it's like a comedy routine. You may not remember the way the letter to the Laodiceans goes right away, but it's probably familiar. Jesus says, "You are neither hot nor cold, but you are lukewarm, and therefore I am going to," most accurate translation would be, "vomit you out of my mouth. You make me sick." He says, "You think that you're great, you're proud of what you can do and how much you own, but you're really naked, and you should be ashamed. And you know what, Laodiceans? Look out, because I stand at the door and I knock. And if any of you lousy, naked, wretched, shameful Laodiceans should dare to answer the door, do you know what I'm going to do? Do you know? If anyone should answer that door, I will come in and eat with them." Oh yeah! And you know what else? They're going to eat with me. Brothers and sisters, we may not burn incense at altars. We may not run after the Baals when God calls to us. But we know what we've done. I've loved God half-heartedly. I have completely failed to love my neighbor as myself. I've hurt people, I've ignored them when I should have embraced them and known them and loved them. We know what we've done. We know all too well what we deserve. Behold, God, who held our hands and taught us to walk, who healed us, who bends down to give us food, who holds us as we rest our chins on his shoulder, puts his cheek against ours, squeezes us and loves us. Behold, God stands at the door and knocks. And now it is time to open that door to our loving Daddy, our holy Mommy, God will come in and eat with us. And we will eat with him.
Now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace now and forevermore. Amen. Amen. Thank you.